I've got Ray Rocher from Miss Brit Charters and R&R Tackle. I've known Ray for a long time, and he's always been the king of bait. So he's coming here to help me talk about bait.
Some days I need less bait and more big fish.
Exactly.
But I'll take what I can get.
So what baits actually are we talking about when we're talking about going out and getting baits to fish with?
You know, like Jimbo was saying, South Florida has such a variety.
Right.
Pilchards, for us, pilchards, herring, call them greenies up north, blue runners, goggle eyes, cigar minnows. On a given day, we're trying for a lot of different things. Today we caught a bunch of herring. And you got to kind of be prepared with that, have the right rigs.
Are there any of those baits that you prefer for different species, or like say the goggle eyes for sails, or will you just say, you know what, if we're catching pilchards, that's what we're going to use? First sailfish
I caught working as a mate was on a yellowtail. So,
you
know,
go.
that just really
They
threw
will
me
eat
off.
anything,
They will. Yeah.
So what kind of rigs are we going to be using? I mean, sabiki rigs are way better than catching them with a cast net because it beats them to hell, you know. So we want to catch them with a sabiki rig. Which ones are we going to be using?
Well, I like a mix red and green because baits like a pilchard or a sardine like red, herring like green, cigar minnows like green. So having a mixture of colors really helps find what school you're looking at on the quarter. You might mark a blob of bait and not really know what it is, throw that in there. And if it's all sardines, then you might switch over to an all red rig.
An all red one.
So, you know what I mean? I call this the starter rig.
I got you.
And then if you're going to go for blue runners, you might use something like this, you know, a flashy,
something with a big head on it.
Big hook, strong line, goggle eyes, whole bunch of hooks, nighttime trying to catch a whole bunch at once. So, you know, that's the whole idea of, and bonitas, you want to catch, you know, live bait and small bonitas.
Right.
So we just try to match the hatch of what they're eating.
And all these baits that we're after will eat a sabiki rig, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So how are we going to, when we're out there, how do we use these? I know a lot of guys that I know, they just cast it out there. Half the time it hooks them in the butt when they're doing it. But once we get it out there, what's the technique that's best to load that thing up?
I'll give you a crash course.
Right.
First of all,
whoa, there's the crash.
Crash. Anyways, so when you go to cast a sabiki, if you ever take a sabiki and go to cast it overhead like this, a lot of times one of those hooks will snag the line. Your lead goes, your sabiki stays.
Right.
Bottom line, if you can cast underhand like that, much safer.
Right.
And when you jig, I see a lot of people will jig up like this. They'll cast the rig out, and you see them jigging up, then wind down, and then jig up. But in nature, what does a shrimp do? If something comes to eat him, he goes down to the seafloor. So I always lift my rig up, stop it, stop it, stop it, but always with my finger on the line. And the reason is when I lift my hand up and I lower that rig and I stop it at a third of the way or half the way and then I lower it again, all I'm doing when I jerk is to see if he's there. When I do feel that vibration, now I'm just going to wind as slow as I can to keep a bend in the rod, let the bait accumulate. That's why we have so many hooks.
And you can load it up.
Yep. And then one last thing, when you do get the baits to the surface, lift your rod, wind your swivel all the way to the tip, lift your rod straight up, capture the lead. Now your baits are all hanging downward and off of the line, so you're not scratching them up.
And you told me during the break that the amount of weight that you use on your sabiki rigs, and I was blown away. How much weight do you put on your sabiki rig?
On a goggle eye rig, 32 ounces.
32 ounces.
Because your biggest enemy, most fish, you know, the quills or shrimp in nature would go downward when there's danger. When you hook a fish, almost always they're going up. You ever hooked a greenie or a threadfin and see them splashing out there on the surface? Well, if you don't keep up with the slack, then these hooks will hook together because one of the bottom fish will get tangled up with one of the top fish and you'll come up, if your rig ever looks like this, like I just untangled a second ago.
All right, hold it real still when you get it.
If you ever come up and your rig is like that,
the two little hooks are hooked together.
That means you had two baits, they swam into each other and that acted as a dehooker. So,
and that was because it was too loose.
Too loose. So on a small rig like this, I might have just like that, 2 ounces. And that's really to keep the rig stretched tight so you can maximize the amount of bait. Leaving it in the school is the most important part. I see a lot of people hook bait and they just want to wind real fast, get them to the boat. Two bad things happen. Pull the hook out of their mouth and remove them from the other fish that might load up their rig. Take your time, keep a light bend in the rod.
Right, and always use a dehooker to get them off.
I do.
Because that's, if you're holding them in your hand and you're taking all that slime off, they're not going to last as long as one that won't.
Yep, I'm going to show you real quick. If you get a bait near the boat, just like I said, we're going to lift straight up. We're going to just act like we just caught this bait. Grab the lead, See what I mean about holding the rod sideways? Now the bait is free of the line. I'm gonna get him over a live well like this. We're gonna just use the dehooker to turn the hook upside down.
Right.
I don't know if you can see that, but all a dehooker does is reverse the shape, the angle of the hook. So now instead of the hook pointing upwards, the hook's pointing downward.
And he's gone.
That's all the dehooker
Well, that's
does.
it, man. We blew through that 5 minutes pretty quick. We could talk to any about any of these things for 5 minutes,
That's
probably.
right.
Well, thanks a lot, brother.
No
And
problem.
when you say we, you mean Ray.
Well, I mean, Ray talking. Exactly.
Sorry, I didn't let you get a word in edgewise.
That's
did I?
fine.
It's okay. Dave's really okay with that. It was great.